Hello everyone, in this episode we're going to talk about the basics of Blood Bowl. I'm going to go through some of the dice results, some basic strategies on how to play the game, and just all that kind of stuff. Not going to go deep into tactics. A lot of what I'm going to say you can probably take into the other miniatures games we play. I thought with Blood Bowl about to come out and be re-released by Games Workshop, it's probably a good time to sit and talk about something like this. So, the one key thing when we come to Blood Bowl is that if you try to do something and mess it up, normally the end of your turn results in a turnover. So the basic premise of Blood Bowl for me is that you do your safe actions first and move through them in that order. Well, now we've just got to try and figure out what are actual safe actions. So, stuff like standing a player up who's prone. As long as you're not trying to move him out of tackle zones, anything like that, stand him up. Moving players into a tackle zone to, start blocking, forming a cage around the ball, anything like that that's just moving a player, doesn't involve rolling any dice, is a safe move. Then you have things like using stuff where you're going to get the built-in rerolls from your skills. So once you've formed a protective cage around the ball, giving yourself some things just in case stuff goes wrong, try and pick the ball up. Normally it's like a 2 up or a 3 up with a reroll, depending on the team you play. If you've got sure hands, it's going to make it a lot easier, a lot safer to do. And it's just that kind of thing, moving into that strategy. But what you don't want to try and do is, I've got to pick the ball up first, because if you don't put plays around it, fail to pick it up, fail on the reroll, scatters out of your square, and then you're giving your opponent a chance to score. So what I try and do is create as many safe scenarios for me, whilst optimizing the number of dice my opponent's going to have to roll to do anything. So then we come on to different things like the block dice. So you have a d6 with some funny symbols on it. So there's 2 pushbacks. There is an attacker down, which is the horrible skull that nobody likes. There is both down, which is the one that block lets you ignore the bad part of. There's defender stumbles, where if you're trying to tackle someone with dodge, it becomes a pushback, but otherwise is a defender down. And then there is defender down. So it's a good, interesting spread of results that are all affected by different skills in different ways. And that's part of the beauty of the Blood Bowl system, is how the different skills manipulate the block dice and how you use that in the game. So, on a very basic level, if you roll a block die, you've got a 4 in 6 chance of getting a favourable result, whether it be pushback, defender stumbles, or defender down. Both down can be considered favourable if it's your last activation. Not too bad your player going down and the player going down. And then obviously there's a 1 in 6 chance of just rolling the attacker down. The way this interacts with the skills, obviously, if you've got block, you get to ignore both down, so you just get your opponent down. If your opponent has block and you don't, they ignore it and can just basically knock you down. And then you have defender stumbles is the other weird one, where if they have dodge, it's just treated as a pushback unless you have tackle. So offensively, you're looking for players who have got both tackle and block. Defensively, you're looking for players who have dodge and block. So the old the blodging witch elves, things like that, are really interesting once you get into that kind of play. That's the main things that manipulate the block dice, other than team rerolls. But we'll go through. I want to talk about the actual chances, which dice you want to roll first, what would be a safe block to throw and stuff like that. But for example, if you've got a 3 dice block you choose, then obviously you want to look at throwing that one first, especially if you've got block on the guy, or a Black Orc hitting someone who doesn't have block, which is a normal scenario you're going to see playing just out of a box is when a Black Orc starts trying to tackle a human catcher. A Black Orc strength 4, human catcher strength 2, so we only need 1 assist in that to take you to more than double the defending player's strength, which is how you gain 3 dice. So it's quite easy to get that positional play in. You line up, you roll your 3 dice, and as long as you don't roll the triple attacker down, you should be fine. Both down, he doesn't have block, he only has dodge, so you can knock yourself down there, but more likely you'll pick the push if you have to. So a 3 dice block is really favourable. Obviously when you get the reroll from a team reroll as well, you're likely to be safe. When we get into things like choosing between, should I throw a 1 dice block or with block, or should I throw a 2 dice you choose, things like that, that's where it gets a little bit more interesting. So if you've got block, and if you've got a choice between throwing a 2 dice opponent chooses block with a guy who has the block skill, or throwing a 1 die block with a player who doesn't have a block skill, the 2 die opponent chooses is actually the better choice. There's 11 results that have the attacker died, so if you're watching the video here you can see there are 11 results that have a 1 in them, so we'll treat attacker down as the 1 result on d6, and basically 11 divided by 36 is that 30.58% chance of it going wrong. Whereas if you just throw a 1 die block and don't have block, you have the 33% recurring chance of it going wrong, because there's 2 results that can screw you over. So it's marginally better. You're talking like 1 in 36 chance better. The actual difference between the 2, but it's well worth trying to pick your things in that order, and most of the time you'll just pick it up as you're playing, you'll get used to it, and how you actually go about it. But the other things you need to look at is stuff like if you start playing Dark Elves once they are announced and released or whatever, you have like the Frenzy skill on your Witch Elves, which if you only push them, you've got to get dragged up, you have to follow up and throw another block. So making sure you actually position your players for what happens after the push. And that becomes really important when you play defensively. You can't look at what happens if I get blocked. You have to look at what happens if I get blocked, pushed and then blitzed. I see a lot of people making the mistakes of playing like 1 square out from the touch lines and being able to get the players pushed into a crowd by well set up blocks and things like that. So make sure you're aware of the position, the potential of what can happen, not just what should happen, if this 1 dice roll happens, because you'll get your good opponents that you play against will pick the push over a defender down now in the hope that they can push you out of the field later. And the other strategies that come down to basics are deciding when to actually put tackle zones on players and when to put tackle zones in space that you want to stop players from going. And this really comes into its own when you look at the difference of playing between against an Orc team, for example, and playing against an Elf team. If you're playing against the Orcs, if you put tackle zones on the players, they're unlikely to be able to dodge out. Their agility is not that high, not many of them can get dodge, so you have the ability to put tackle zones on them, get multiple assists so that we don't want to throw the block, and even if they do throw a block, the chances are they're not going to, we only get the 1 blitz per turn, so you can tier your defences. Against an Elf team, if you walk everyone up and match the players player for player, they have a higher agility, so they're much more likely to be able to successfully dodge out of a tackle zone, which then opens up the manoeuvrability of the team, which is inherent to a lot of the Elf teams. So it's another thing you need to consider. It's if you push your team too far up to engage them in a line of scrimmage, they can jump back and then get around you. Whereas if you form up the spaces in front of them, make them have to try and come through you to get that touchdown. And just don't make anything too hasty. It's worth trying different setups and looking at the board with the number of players you have available and try and plan paths and look at how you can stop different approaches. Are you going to try and swamp the two touch lines, the two wide zones? Are you going to keep compact to the middle? How many players you want hanging back to be able to catch anyone who does make it through? All that kind of thing. Definite considerations. Don't just line everyone up on the line of scrimmage and plan to just beat them to death. You want to make sure you're planning around the movement and the potential position that players will have. With all people who've played Blood Bowl for a while will be aware of the horror stories of like the turn one touchdowns from Skaven and stuff like that. So for all new people to Blood Bowl, just be aware that it's not all about lining up for humans and orcs in the centre and just punching each other. It's got lots of intricacies which people sometimes miss. What I'll try and do is I'll link to a couple of written articles I did a long time ago in the description, and then for people watching the video rather than listening on the podcast, I'll try and get some demonstrations, not necessarily on the pitch. I might have a look if I can show some stuff off in the Blood Bowl computer game just to show some different positional play and stuff like that. But that'll be it. Thanks for watching and listening. Hope you find it relatively helpful. Like I say, it is titled Blood Bowl Basics for a reason. But understand the block dice, what the different results mean and what they can do for you, so you know when to roll them and when not to roll them. You don't have to go for every player who can block and throw that block. You can just not leave a tackle zone there. It can be more important. Understanding the outcomes of rolling 2 dice and who gets to choose. Because the 2 dice you choose is massively favourable, but sometimes 2 dice your opponent chooses isn't actually that bad when you compare it to normal blocking skills when you don't have, normal block die rolls when you don't have a block skill. So if you can get your blitzers in position, you're actually not that bad doing the 2 dice opponent chooses blocks. And that's it. Hope you take this stuff on board. If you've ordered Blood Bowl, let me know. I'm going to go in deep and get 2 boxes of Skaven to make a full Skaven team straight away. Looking forward to looking at the Forge World big guys and seeing what comes from that. But everyone should try Blood Bowl at least once. Good fun game, and thanks for listening.